You're listening to part 7 of our 8-part series, Colds and Flus, The Wise Woman Way with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Hi, Gemini. Green blessings to everyone. What a delight to be back here with you all again. So, up until this point, we have been doing our best to stay healthy and to generally prevent colds and flus, although at the very beginning we talked about the fact that it might even be a good idea to now and then get a cold or the flu because it actually helps the immune system to give it something to do. But not constant colds, and certainly not colds that become a deep infection in the body, whether that's a deep infection in the throat, in the lungs, or in the sinuses. This is not what we want to happen, but sometimes it does happen. Sometimes it's not just a cold, but it has gone deep into the bronchia and we have bronchitis. Sometimes their bacteria have set up housekeeping up in the sinuses or in the throat. What are we going to do? We are going to use our anti-infective herbs, the ones that we've been talking about. We have echinacea as a great anti-infective. We have yarrow as a wonderful anti-infective. We have various evergreen tinctures, including propolis tincture, that are wonderful anti-infectives. And we have a host of specific herbs that herbalists use when dealing with cough, chest congestion, bronchitis, and the bacterial part of colds and flus. I mentioned when we were together last that my favorite remedy when my throat is sore or when it's feeling kind of cranky is a spoonful of really good honey, Manuka honey being one of the most treasured of them. Now, if that honey is added to a cup of herbal tea, well, all the better. Eh? Nothing lost so far as I'm concerned by putting our honey into our tea. So we could go out, gather a handful of evergreen needles, excepting yew, which is very short, pointy needles, and red fleshy berries, and we do not want to use yew. So any other evergreen would be fine: cedar, juniper, pine, the tree hemlock, not poison hemlock, all wonderful. Needles in a cup, pour some boiling water in, add some honey. You have a highly effective way of countering the bacteria that are causing the cough, that are causing the congestion in the lungs, that are causing the inflammation in the bronchia, that are causing the infection in the sinuses. Drinking that hot evergreen needle tea with honey goes both up and down. The hot steam pours up into the sinuses, and remember that those evergreens, the resins of those evergreens burned, actually has direct contact power. So as that steam goes up into the sinuses, it's killing bacteria up in there, and then of course going down through the throat and moving through the blood very quickly into the lungs. I often like to remind us that there's a brand of cough drops called Pine Brothers. Pine Brothers cough drops no longer contain pine. I'm sure originally that they did. Somebody brought me some actual pine cough drops from England, but they weren't made by Pine Brothers. But I really like it that somehow we maintain the memory of pine being such a soother whenever we are dealing with respiratory area from the sinuses right down into the deepest part of the bronchia. Any respiratory distress, pine is there to help us, and honey with it, why not? Many people are shocked when they hear me describe milk as one of the greatest healers of the respiratory system. And if you recall the book Heidi, you remember that Heidi and her friend were both taken up into the mountains, into the Alpen meadows, there to spend the months of the summer in the meadows with, I believe it was Heidi's grandfather who was there, and the milk from the goats and the cows who were there. And this enacted a transformative cure on both Heidi and her sickly friend. Yes, indeed, milk is the medicine of the lung. Let's look at a classic way to heal any lung problems, and not just lung congestion and colds and flus, but also asthma and allergies that cause lung congestion as well. The plant that we're going to use is mullein. And mullein is a roadside plant, fairly well known to all of us because it's big. Mullein can easily grow 4, 5, 6 feet tall. There's places where I've seen it be even 7 or 8 feet tall. It's got big leaves, big fuzzy flannelly leaves. And I often say to students, before you think of using mullein leaf as toilet paper, remember that Quaker ladies rubbed mullein leaf on their cheeks because they weren't allowed to wear makeup. And sometimes people look at me and you can see their tumblers turning in their minds and going, rubbed on cheeks, can't wear makeup, must make cheeks red. Use as toilet paper. I wonder if it will make, down there, red. Yes, ouch. Ooh. So, although it looks soft, all right, and absorbent, it's not so absorbent, and it could leave you red, where you would never use cosmetics anyhow. So instead, we're going to harvest mullein leaves, and we're going to dry them. Or we could harvest mullein leaves and make a tincture of them. At a large goddess conference last year, I was sitting with the entire group in the auditorium for a presentation, and the woman behind me was coughing. And it was the kind of cough that you don't like to hear because it feels like it's hurting the person who's coughing. And so after the presentation was over, I turned around to her, and I said, I have something with me that might help your cough. And she said, oh, yeah. This is the old thing that's been going on for a long time. This is like my lungs. And I said, well, it could help. So she trailed me back to my room, and I gave her some mullein leaf tincture. I didn't give her very much, 5 drops. And the next day, she sought me out, and she said, that mullein leaf tincture worked better than anything I had ever used to open up my lungs. And I said, yeah, mullein leaf tincture is great, and just a little dab will do you. And the mullein leaf infusion is even better. So I typically harvest the mullein leaves late in the year to make the tincture, but I harvest the mullein for infusion earlier. And it's somewhat confusingly, mullein takes 2 full years to complete its growth cycle. So it's late in the first year of growth that I harvest the leaves to tincture, and the middle of the second year of growth that I harvest the leaves for infusion. When the mullein pushes up into that big tall flower stalk is when I harvest it for infusion, cutting the entire flower stalk. Leaves and all, hanging it upside down just like a big stalk of tobacco. And then I say breaking it up, but I have to use some tool to cut it because that mullein stalk can be quite stiff and hard. And weighing out 1 ounce of the dried mullein leaf and stalk, and using that to make a quart of infusion. To tell you the truth, we usually make quite a bit of mullein infusion at a time because people really like it. So let's make half a gallon. Let's use 2 ounces of dried mullein leaf and stalk in a half-gallon container or in a pan with half a gallon of water. Bring the water to a boil. Pour it into the half-gallon jar with some mullein leaf, or put the 2 ounces of mullein leaf into the pan with half a gallon of boiling water. That's 2 quarts or 2 liters. Turn the fire off or put a lid on the jar and let your infusion steep for at least 4 hours. It will turn very, very, very dark brown. There are a lot of tannins in mullein. One of the reasons that it's so effective in the lungs, it's a powerful astringent. It astringes the disease. It stops the inflammation, and it restores the original message to the lungs of what they need to be doing, how they need to be operating. Mullein leaves, as I said, look soft and kind of fuzzy, but they can cause irritation. They can cause reddening of the cheeks. And it's those fuzzy hairs on the leaves that actually break off into the skin and cause that redness and that irritation. So we don't want to be drinking an infusion that has little hairs in it, because it will make our throat feel all jittery. So strain your mullein infusion through some kind of material, whether that's a coffee filter, or I used to take my mom's stained linen napkins. I would say, this one will never look right again. I'll take it. And use it to strain my mullein. I've even strained it through a washcloth. Any tightly knit material will work. If we were in India, we could use the sari. However, remember those tannins, those astringent tannins, they do stain. So whenever you strain your mullein infusion through, it is going to be stained from the straining. So don't use some priceless thing that you want to have back. Don't use a really pretty towel from your kitchen that's going to have a big brown circle in it from where you stained the mullein infusion. All right, now we finally have our mullein infusion. We've harvested it. We've dried it. We've cut it up. We've allowed it to steep for 4 hours or more after putting boiling water with it. We've strained it through a cloth, and now we're going to refrigerate it. When we want to drink it, we're going to measure out half a cup of mullein and half a cup of milk. We're going to make them hot, steaming hot, and then stir a spoon of honey in it and sit down and drink it. Now, that is a wonderful way to start the day. It is deep and delicious. My daughter makes mullein chai. So when she is getting the milk for the mullein milk, she infuses aromatic spices into that milk, cardamom and cloves and cinnamon and sometimes the little orange peel. And she lets those things infuse in the milk as it heats up, and then as the mullein continues to heat it, strains it, and she drinks her, adds some honey to it, and she drinks her mullein chai hot or cold. Mullein is my absolute favorite herb for anyone who is having any kind of breathing difficulty, whether it is brought about by a cold or flu, an infection going into the lungs, or by some other thing that could be smoking, that could be stress, that could be asthma, allergies, variety of different things. Mullein seems, from my experience, to be helpful through all of those situations and to help all of those people. Mullein, in many older herbals, is paired with Coltsfoot. Coltsfoot has a wonderful botanical name. It's called Tussilagopharvara. Tussa is to cough. We think of pertussis, which is whooping cough. So tussa. And lago means to go, to travel, to go away. So tussa lago means cough, go away, and far is where we want it to go. Coughs go away far, far. Yes, indeed. To Sabago Barbara, Coltsfoot. Both Mullein and Coltsfoot, when dried and burned as a smudge, have the ability to dilate and open up bronchia. They are used as emergency first aid for someone who is having an asthma attack and not able to breathe. I have seen, especially Mullein smudge, restore breathing very, very rapidly to people literally within seconds. Coltsfoot is a really beautiful plant, and it was one of the first plants that really kind of waved at me and said, "Hi, over here where I live, Coltsfoot just lines all of the roadside ditches and is very profuse. The flowers, the beautiful yellow flowers of the Coltsfoot, really say, woohoo, okay, the flowering time of spring is finally here, coming up even before the dandelion is blooming." But Coltsfoot has, over the time that I have been interested in herbs, had its reputation first tarnished and then besmirched, and then people have gotten quite terrified of it, and I don't really know what to say about it. I never really took Coltsfoot up on her propositions too. I did eat some Coltsfoot in my early days of foraging. I've certainly used Coltsfoot smudge. I've never made a Coltsfoot tea or a Coltsfoot tincture or a Coltsfoot infusion. And now we find that Coltsfoot contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids. PAs for short, and pyrrolizidine alkaloids can have a detrimental effect on the liver. Pyrrolizidine alkaloids we usually hear about in connection to comfrey root. Symphytum officinalis, the wild yellow-flowered comfrey root, which apparently has enough pyrrolizidine alkaloid to actually impact our liver. Turns out that Coltsfoot may as well, and borage too. So, interestingly enough, although I have grown borage, I love its beautiful blue flowers. Again, like the Coltsfoot, it was a plant that beckoned to me, and I said, I'm not so sure. So I find it interesting looking back to see my reaction to these plants was, yes, you're nice, yes, you're lovely, yes, I love you, but not now. And then to have science say, well, it may be that there is something there that is not so wholesome. I remember being in Germany, teaching in Germany, and seeing the headline in the paper where I was, I think in Munich, and it said, Hufletig ist Teufelkraut. Hufletig is Coltsfoot in German. And the Teufel, the devil, kraut, a plant. Coltsfoot is the devil's plant. Indeed, a small child just died from supposedly consuming Coltsfoot syrup that she was taking for a cold. The immediate response was to remove all Coltsfoot products from the shelves in Germany. It turned out, after some investigation, that the actual product that she had been taking did not contain any Coltsfoot at all, although indeed it probably was the cause of her death, but a little too complicated outside our discussion to go into. But this and other things had caused people to start to regard Coltsfoot with a great deal of suspicion and to use it less and less. If Coltsfoot grows around you, and you are interested in using it, what I suggest is that you make a tincture of the Coltsfoot flowers, or that you harvest and dry some of the larger leaves toward the end of the growing season and use those as a smudge. Coltsfoot makes coughs go far away. It is considered a specific against whooping cough or any kind of cough that seems to just go on and on and on. What an herbalist would call a non-productive cough. wild cherry is another herb specific for non-productive coughs. Wild cherry bark is the part that is used by herbalists, and it is usually tinctured. Small amounts of wild cherry bark sedate the nerve that triggers coughing. So, if someone is coughing and they're coughing up all kinds of stuff, we don't want to interfere with that. That's a productive cough, and we go, okay, better out than in. Cough it up and get it out. But if it's just a kind of panting cough that isn't really doing any good to anybody, then wild cherry is an excellent resource for stopping that cough in its tracks. Now, I talked about Pine Brothers cough drops. Well, Pine Brothers cough drops are probably available in cherry flavor, aren't they? So there we have it. Our collective memory remembers the herbs that help to counter coughs, yes indeed, pine and cherry, and gives us a brand name and an artificial flavor. A good remembering, but not quite effective herbal medicine. Wild cherry bark tincture is an item of commerce. If you are dealing with a cough or frequently deal with a cough, it is probably a good idea to have some wild cherry bark tincture on hand. Osha ligusticum porteri is a member of the celery or carrot family. Osha, O-S-H-A, Osha, is one of the herbs in my herbal medicine chest. So if you want to know lots more about Osha, go back to the archives and listen to me talk about it in the herbal medicine chest series. But it is certainly worth mentioning here when we are talking about coughs and chest congestion that Osha acts as an blocker to histamine. When we say that something is inflamed, when we say that there's congestion, then what we are basically talking about is a histamine response. Histamine is a substance produced by our body that causes cells to swell up, to literally become inflamed. There's good reason for this. This histamine response keeps any contagion of any kind, whether it's venom from a snake bite or a bacterial mat from bronchitis, from getting out into the body at large by causing swelling where the problem is. By sending histamine to where the problem is, the body tries to create a space where that material can be warded, where it doesn't get out and start running amok everywhere. Osha counters that histamine response. Now, obviously, if we need it, we don't want to counter it. But sometimes when we're dealing with colds and flus, and then when we're dealing with bacterial infections that come with them, the inflammatory process gets so out of hand that we literally feel like we can hardly breathe, like there's a weight on our chest, like we're deeply congested. This is where I would think to use Osha. Osha, to my mind, because it is the root of a perennial plant that is reasonably rare, should be used in very tiny doses and should be used only when there is an absolute need for Osha. And there are certainly times when I have a speaking engagement and I get a cold. And there I am backstage, coughing, sneezing, my nose running, and thinking this is not kind to my audience. So, in fact, I don't wind up backstage like that because I know if that's happening. And about 15 minutes before I'm due to go on, I take 5 to 10 drops of Osha tincture. And this brightens my eye, and this unstuffs my nose. This stops the snot from running out my nose. This opens and frees my voice. And after the talk, I go and drink some hot lemon water with lots of honey and get in bed and take care of myself because I just tricked myself. But better to present my ideas without the coughing and the sneezing and the snotting and all of that. So I don't think of Osha as a cure for colds, although I have seen books that recommend it that way. I wouldn't use it that way, again, because to me this is a very precious plant and something I want to use in just tiny little doses. One of its names is singer's root, and it's called singer's root because it has such a powerful effect on opening up the lungs and opening up the throat. And the last herb that we're going to talk about tonight is sage. Salvia. Salvia is a botanical name, but it is also Latin for the Savior. And thus there is a pun on sage. Why die? And of course the pun's in Latin. Why die is translated when the Savior grows in your garden. Why die when sage is growing in your garden? Sage is indeed considered to be the Savior, and it is especially a Savior when it comes to colds and flus and their associated bacterial infections. Sage just gets right into those throat tissues and knocks out the bacteria. Hot cup of sage tea, that sage floods up into the sinuses, knocks out the bacteria. Drink that sage, it goes into the blood and thence to the lungs and knocks out the bacteria in the lungs. Why die when the Savior is growing in your garden? Right there, sage. One of my favorite ways to have sage during the cold and flu season is late in the fall or any time during the summer. I harvest sprigs of sage, chop them up coarsely, fill a jar with them, and then pour honey till the jar is filled to the top. And I set that aside. Then, in the wintertime, if I have a cough or a sore throat or a sinus infection, I grab my jar of sage honey, stick my spoon in it, grab a spoonful of honey and sage, pour boiling water over it, voila, instant tea. And so antibacterial, because sage is also an antibacterial, and so soothing and healing to the throat and the lungs because the honey is there. What an easy way to take care of ourselves on a cold winter day. I make all kinds of herbal honey, and especially the ones from the mint family can be used just like the sage. Marjoram honey, rosemary honey, lilac honey, peppermint honey, shiso honey, lemon balm honey, orange mint honey. Any kind of aromatic mint that you want to make a honey out of, you can use just like I'm using that sage. A spoonful in a cup, filled to the top of the boiling water, and you have an instant way to heal and restore health. This is Susan Weed. Come and visit me at SusanWeed.com. You can also come and visit my bookshop wisewomanbookshop.com. Lots of fun things at the bookshop. If you like listening, if you have a commute, I have MP3s and CDs of recordings that have been made of my talks over the past 25 years. Lots and lots of different topics for you to explore there. In addition, you will find my books, Wise Woman Herbal for the Childbearing Year, New Menopausal Years, The Wise Woman Way, Breast Cancer, Breast Health, The Wise Woman Way, Healing Wise, The Big Green Herbal for Everyone, and my newest book, Down There, Sexual and Reproductive Health, The Wise Woman Way. Thanks, everybody, for being with me. And thanks, Gemini.
Thank you, Susan. You've been listening to Part 7 of our 8-part series, Colds and Flus, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Wade at Thyme Radio.